storm winds, but our low pressure actually deepens. And so we're going to have thunderstorm winds and we're going to have synoptic scale winds as well. It's going to be a really rough day. And what do we always talk about is if you look at about 850 millibars and you look at that low-level jet that is punching in, I mean, the numbers on this thing are intense. So you're going to get a lot of energy from a lot of different layers in the atmosphere, not only as you go into the lower levels, but also into the upper levels as well. And remember, with our winds 70 to 90 miles an hour, you're talking about tree damage, roof damage, power outages, of course, with that. And then weak structures could also have significant damage too. Now, you get tornadic winds, and those, they actually spin counterclockwise. You can see that in the damage. You can also get straight line winds. With that squall that was coming through, you do have a chance of just getting some strong winds that are going to come down, and that blows everything in the same direction. And so when you get straight line winds, what the National Weather Service looks at for damage is everything kind of blown right in the same direction. And those straight line winds can be just as damaging as a tornado. So do keep that in mind. Are we going to get a derecho? Well, right now it looks like we're going to have basically a squall line. But essentially, if we do get this cluster of thunderstorms with 58-mile-per-hour winds or greater for at least 400 miles long and at least 60 miles wide, that's a derecho. But right now it's looking like it's setting up like a squall line and not necessarily, technically speaking, a derecho, but we might have one in there that is certainly possible. Hail, there it is, 2 inches or greater, and you're talking about lime, egg-size hail. Those parameters really pop up. This thing gets going more into the afternoon and into the evening, which is super unfortunate because that's when a lot of people are super busy. I know there's graduations going on, there's parties, and then it, is going to continue once we go to bed as well. So there's your softball size hail. Look at the required updraft, 100-mile-per-hour updraft to keep that thing afloat, Jordan, and growing.
And the reality is, of course, we could see some.
Back to you, Jim.
Right.
And there it is for you. And one of the reasons that we're going to see flooding is because of everything Jim just said. It's the rounds of rain that are going to be coming down for us. We already have flood watches, which means conditions are favorable for flooding. We've got moisture, we've got lift, and that's going to squeeze a lot of juice out of the atmosphere. Now, we could use the rain here into Iowa, obviously not all at once, but we certainly could use it. Look at things already getting started here. We do have severe thunderstorm warnings as we have a line that's rotating through Omaha, now just getting into one of these severe thunderstorm warnings. We also have multiple flash flood warnings already, including Des Moines, and the event really hasn't even gotten started. That's the thing. You're going to get multiple rounds of this type of rain over the past 12 hours. We've already seen over 5 inches of rain. So you're talking about a month's worth of rain in some places in a very short amount of time. Taking you down a little bit closer here. Oh, tornado warning just popping up here, Jilly. I don't know if you can see that, if we can zoom out to that quickly on this line. I think this is a good example to show you that even on these squall lines here, you can get tornadoes to spin up because you get little notches to form. I can see kind of that little notch. You can kind of see the notch there. Severe thunderstorm on the back end is where is getting that spin because you get all the winds that come down, push out ahead of you, and then you can get little spins to twirl up on the end. And there it is for you. Again, you see that wind blowing out and then that notch developing. So here's where the rotation is located, heading off to the north and east. So if you basically live towards Webster, you need to seek shelter immediately along 15. I would seek shelter immediately here, immediately just north of I-30. If you're in North Bend, Schuler, or Webster, you need to seek shelter as there is rotation here. Webster, 535 is coming to you. Wrigley, 538. We'll be right back. Welcome back into America's Morning Headquarters. I'm meteorologist Stephanie Abrams alongside meteorologist Jordan Steele and Jim Cantori. A dangerous day for storms today in the central U.S. We have a Torcon of 7 with a bullseye targeting the plains and parts of the Midwest. Large hail will be a main hazard. Yesterday, half-dollar size, golf ball size hail falling in Cedar County, Nebraska, about 2 hours northwest of Omaha, where we're also seeing winds, where we saw winds, I should say, gusting to 65 miles an hour. And to even up that even more, Jim, in Colorado, softball size hail, 4 inches in diameter. I mean, it's like,
right.
What?
Well, they had 4 chime-in hail.
Weeks until the official start of the 2024 hurricane season. We're keeping you protected before you get a named storm. And we have seen monster storms strike the U.S. and along the Gulf Coast. Hurricane Michael is the last Category 5 storm to hit in October of 2018, and this week we're talking all things October. It was the strongest storm to make landfall in the Florida Panhandle, packing winds of 160 miles an hour. There's Michael for you right there. But notice all of the Cat 3, Cat 4, and then, of course, Michael was a Cat 5 that have struck. The storm also damaged more than 2 million acres of forest land in Georgia, costing the timber industry more than $750,000. I remember driving away from the coast trying to get back to Atlanta, where we are all based out of, and how the tree damage did go into Georgia and the power outages as well. And so we had major damage for us here from Michael, just from the wind. This is why we always say it's not just a coastal thing. It can also impact you inland. And we now have this extreme wind warning, and that's where you could see winds of 115 miles an hour. So if you ever are under extreme wind warning during a hurricane, you can expect to lose power, and make sure that you treat this kind of like a tornado. Go to the lowest level, most interior section of your home. We'll have more on the tips next hour. Everything has kind of initiated and gets even worse. One of the reasons, if you look at the low-level jet, it's screaming into this area around 50 knots, maybe a little higher. That really energizes things as we go into the afternoon, and we could see winds here over 75 miles an hour. Trees are going to be down. Power is going to be out. There will be damage. So there's your low pressure at the surface. Your low-level southerly winds, look how they are screaming from the south. And you're going to get some spin as we have some upper level winds. Now, these are coming also from the south-southwest, but we also have our jet that will be coming from the west as well. Straight line winds, they can be just as bad as tornadic winds. And when you get them 70 to 90 miles an hour, widespread damage not only to trees, but roofs and also weak structures could sustain damage. What happens with these straight line winds as we get everything coming down and out ahead of our thunderstorm, it blows everything in the same direction. Unlike a tornado that actually spins counterclockwise, you can see that in the debris. This will blow everything straight, and this can be just as damaging as a tornado. Then we talk about hail, 2 inches, that's lime size, egg size, whichever you fancy, or bigger. Now, yesterday we had up to 4 inches, up to softball size hail, and those parameters really can come into play as we head into the afternoon hours, and you see this big line develop and push across the Midwest, make its way eastbound. And then, by the way, it doesn't stop for our Wednesday. It's going to stretch from New York to Chicago. But in order to get softball size hail, you have to have updrafts of 100 miles an hour. In order to get baseball size hail, updrafts of 80 miles an hour to keep the hail up there and accumulating all this ice. So if you get a 100-mile-per-hour updraft, guess what? You're going to get some strong winds coming down with that. And then, of course, once the hail gets too big and the winds are not strong enough, the hail will fall down. So obviously, if you had a softball or teacup size hail and the winds are only 60 miles an hour, it would fall down to the surface, Jordan.
And then you hear clunk, clunk.
I have felt like this for the last, month and a half?
It's nuts.
Been non-stop for us. And don't forget, it was just last month that we had that EF3 tornado here in Elkhorn, just outside of Omaha. And this area, again, is going to get hit not only by severe, but that potential for flooding. And it's because there'll be multiple rounds of rain coming through. This is just the beginning. This is not kind of, oh, we're going to see this morning and then we're going to be done and done. That is not how it's going to work. This is the beginning, and we have a huge squall line. Jordan's going to look back at those tornado warnings and severe thunderstorm warnings momentarily. Look at the flash flood warnings that are lining up. Right along here from Des Moines back towards Omaha, we have had over 5 inches of rain in just the last 12 hours. Huge rainfall totals for us. Zooming in closer to Omaha, we are getting soaked. Harrison, Potawatomi, Washington County. So if you're in Carter Lake, Council Bluffs, Omaha, watch out for this. Bellevue, you're just on the south side, not getting as heavy rain as we are here into Omaha, and back towards Washington. It is really, really bad, coming down very fast, and there is more that will be coming through. We'll have multiple rounds. I-35 in Iowa is just a treacherous travel this morning, north and southbound there into Iowa. This batch of rain is all going to be pushing east, and notice the heaviest stuff into Iowa. Jim was mentioning that heavier rain here down into Arkansas. I think locally we're going to see a lot more than 2 to 3, even 5 inches of rain out of this. We could use the rain over Iowa back towards Nebraska. That's still where it's quite dry. even much of Kansas, we are feeling that drought. So we would welcome that rain, but obviously not all at once. Here are those flash flood threats for us as we go today all the way through our Thursday. Notice Arkansas is in it tomorrow and as we start to wrap up the work week. Timing it out for you, there's your batch of rain. More storms coming in a squall line. And then, Jordan, that's going to lay down from New York to Texas, and that is going to be a wet one for our Thursday. Rounds and rounds of rain even into our Friday.
So ongoing, not stopping as you...
Welcome back into America's Morning Headquarters. I'm meteorologist Stephanie Abrams alongside meteorologist Jordan Steele and Jim Cantori. A dangerous day for storms today in the central U.S. We have a Torcon of 7 with a big bullseye targeting the plains and into the Midwest. To my left, you are looking live at Omaha. The city is under a flash flood warning and severe thunderstorm warning. I want to get right to Jim because, Jim, we have numerous flash flood, severe thunderstorm, and tornado warnings all popping off. And this is just the beginning of what's really going to be a terrible day that's going to go downhill before it gets better.
It sure is.
Right where we leave off, but we have a much broader area of severe weather from New York all the way down into Texas. We do have that warm air. Talk about warm. Our heat indices are going to be over 100 into Texas over the next couple of days. That southerly flow as we head into the afternoon, really energizing things, helping things pop off. That continues into tomorrow evening as well. So we have a Torcon of 3, a lot lower than what we saw today, but all you need is 1 in your neighborhood. And I'll tell you what, you're like, that was a 10, Abrams, and I get it. So hail threat, damaging wind threat right over these areas that don't need any more rain, by the way. Look at the energy popping off tomorrow afternoon. Then things start exploding. Sadly, as we head into the evening hours, when everyone's going to bed, that's when we will see the severe weather really kick in. Wednesday, we will see the storms really fire again later in the day into the evening. I mean, we get them through the day, but we get more of that continuing into the overnight. So I think that flooding could be a huge issue with rounds and rounds of rain, especially over Arkansas. Thursday, we have yet another threat for stronger thunderstorms. And 2 weeks away from the official start of the 2024 hurricane season, we are keeping you protected before we get a named storm. And this week is all things October. And we've seen some monster storms strike the U.S. and along the Gulf Coast in October. One of those, Hurricane Michael. It is the last Category 5 storm to make landfall in the U.S. That was in October of 2018. It's also the strongest storm to make landfall in the Florida Panhandle with winds of 160 miles per hour. Now, Michael underwent rapid intensification, snapped them like that. You only see that with intense winds. So here's a look at the wind gust swath. I mean, it was Category 1 all the way up to Albany and I-75. Tropical storm force winds all the way to Savannah as well. But notice even Cat 3 winds into portions of southern Georgia. That meant that there was big-time tree damage, and this was a huge issue here. Damaged more than 2 million acres of forest land in Georgia, costing the timber industry more than $750 million. We now have something called an extreme wind warning. You might not be as familiar with this. It's been around for a bit, and it's issued when there's going to be sustained winds of 115 miles an hour. That's Category 3 or higher. Conditions are expected within an hour, so this is kind of a nowcasting situation. Lowest level, most interior room, protect your head, and make sure that you do have shoes. I'd say treat it kind of like a tornado warning. So what should you be doing right now, Jim? And what should you do to survive the winds? You don't want to tape. It's all about plywood and shutters. Tapes are literally useless.
It is, but we'll still see people.
Buckle up because we've got a lot to get through here. Jim talked about the tornadoes. How about the wind damage? You don't even need tornadoes in order to get damage. We could see winds of 75 miles an hour. That could certainly cause a lot of damage to your roofs, to trees, to power lines. We have very strong low-level jet coming in here with our winds over 50 knots, and that is going to cause even greater threat of damage because this energizes the thunderstorms. It brings in just strong winds, and the winds mix through the atmosphere. Don't think that just because you have strong winds at one level that your updraft and downdraft can't pull those stronger winds down with it. They can do that. And as you go throughout the atmosphere, we're going to see those winds shift direction, and that's what gives us that tornadic threat. But as we have a big line develop, 70 to 90 mile an hour winds, tree damage, roof damage, and also weak structures. And what happens is as the winds come down from the thunderstorms, it pushes everything in one direction. That's what you call a straight line wind. Opposed to a tornado where you can actually see the counterclockwise spin in the damage, a straight line wind is going to push everything over in the same direction, and they can be just as potent as a weak tornado. So into tonight, there's your hail, 2 inches in diameter. You really get damage when it's over 1 inch in diameter. That's when you get to that severe limit, is 1 inch or greater. But we saw up to 4 inches. Wouldn't be shocked if we saw some Binghams come in with this too. And we will see that parameter really fire up as we head into the afternoon hours for us here. You can see the deeper purples. There's your squall line developing, and everything is going to be pushing east. It looks like it falls apart, but on Wednesday we pick right back up where we left off. We'll get to that in just a minute. But first, Jordan's going to break down the timing now for a few cities.
Yeah, and of course, if we take a look
before we get down into Arkansas, and by the way, today, tomorrow, into Thursday, our flood threat is going to stick around. So first, let's deal with what we are going to see today. Already flash flood warnings within the flood watch, I should say. A flood watch means conditions are capable of flooding, and a flash flood warning means that it is imminent or it's occurring. And look at them stretching from Nebraska all the way into eastern Iowa, where we also have severe thunderstorm warnings, tornado warnings. And this is really just the first round. And I looked up some of our rainfall totals for the month of May. Typically, they're 4.5-ish inches in this area. So we have seen a month's worth of rain in some spots in just the past 12 hours. That has prompted flooding in a lot of locations. Look at all the heavy rainfall and the flood reports that are starting to dot the landscape for us here. Closer into Omaha, don't forget this area just last month dealt with an EF3 tornado, and now we're getting severe weather. Flash flood warning does include Omaha. I-29 is in that as well. And as we push eastbound, Des Moines, the northern area of Des Moines is in a flash flood warning. And here's the thing. We are going to see not only multiple rounds of rain, but very heavy rain with this as well. So, yes, 3 to 5 inches through Thursday, but I think locally we are going to see much heavier amounts. Jordan, there you go. All the way through Thursday, especially Arkansas, you need to be flood aware.
Yeah, as we head into tomorrow and Thursday, of course.
Welcome back into America's Morning Headquarters. I'm meteorologist Stephanie Abrams alongside meteorologist Jordan Steele and Jim Cantore. Dangerous day for storms today in the central U.S. We have a Torcon of 7 with a bullseye targeting the plains in the Midwest. And Jim, we have intense weather happening right now, and it's actually going to get a lot worse before it gets better.
Stephanie, the tornado parameter
away until the official start of the 2024 hurricane season, and we want to keep you protected before we get a named storm. We have seen monster storms strike the U.S. and along the Gulf Coast. This week, we're talking all things October, and one of the hurricanes on this map is Michael, which is a Category 5 that slammed into the panhandle of Florida in October of 2018 with 160-mile-per-hour winds, the strongest storm to make landfall in the Florida panhandle. It went rapid under Florida, and notice these storms are not just coastal issues. We had Category 3 winds all the way into Georgia, tropical storm force winds to Savannah and Brunswick, and look at the tree damage all the way here into Georgia. More than 2 million acres of forested land in the Peach State was destroyed here. And the lumber industry, more than $750 million. I should say they lost more than $750 million. If you have an extreme wind warning, that's when you could have Category 3 or higher. We're talking winds of 115 miles an hour. This is issued usually when you have the storm coming ashore. So what you should do now is make sure you've got plywood, Jim, shutters, and do not tape the windows. That's the one thing we really don't want you to do. It's a waste.
Nope, it is a waste of time. Just be ready, guys. We'll